Well, we're going to talk to you today about, as Mission Hour, and we'll get to this a little bit more as we go. I'm going to put this over here because Marty don't get equal time, but she gets a little bit of time. We decided a while back to, as we were planning this conference, and I was a part of that planning in those days, is that Mission Hour is going to be a little bit different this year. And what we want you to understand and take away is we don't want to tell you about a place. We're going to tell you about a place because that's where God is leading us. But it's not the place that I want you to remember. It's not the place that we intended for you to remember. What we hoped to gain through Missionary Hour this year is to help show you means and opportunities that you can share at through your local church. And so yesterday we heard from Jamie Reynolds with the disaster relief, and I am working with them. That's not really that had no bearing on me leaving here, our family leaving here. That kind of came about a little bit later. Mexico, what we're going to talk about today, is what really, the way the Lord has led us, that caused us to step away from this ministry in a full-time role. But there's ways, like through disaster relief. Jamie didn't mention this yesterday, but through disaster relief, there's a lot of great organizations out there. Larry's always on to me. He said, I would rather see that Mennonite Disaster Services written on your truck. And I've been able to respond with MDS before with Larry after the tornadoes in West Liberty, and been a lot of great organizations that we've been able to partner with and things. But you can partner with the Southern Baptist Disaster Relief if that's what you would like to do, whether you're Southern Baptist or not. They would be pleased. If you are like-minded in your belief and from your church, you are more than welcome to. He didn't mention that yesterday. They won't put you in leadership roles, but they would very much love for you to get trained and respond along with that. But there's a lot of great organizations out there. That's one way to get involved through your local church. We're going to talk about partnerships today, and then Kimmy's going to talk tomorrow, which some of you will remember Kimmy as well, as she served in full-time here for a while. She'll share about a little bit of more of a shorter-term mission trip. I'll talk about that term here as we get started. That's not my favorite term, and you'll know that by the end. But today, where we want to start is we want to start with Scripture. We want to look because you need to know why we need to go, and you know this. Many people know this, or you all know this already, as far as the calling goes. And so if you go to Matthew 28, 18 to 20, that's our Great Commission passage, right? That's kind of the go-to Great Commission when we're sent out, when Jesus sends us out to all the nations. But that's not the only place that we find that in Scripture. We find the Great Commission passage going into throughout all of the Gospels. And so we find it in not only Matthew, but Mark. We find it in Mark. That's why she doesn't get equal time. We see in Mark, and he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. We see it in Luke. Oh gosh. And he said to them, thus it is written, and thus it was necessary for Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead on the third day, and that the repentance and remission of sin should be preached in His name to all the nations, beginning at Jerusalem. We see John 17 in His high priestly prayer. He says, as you have sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. And then He tells the disciples that in John 20:21. Jesus said to them again, peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you. And then, of course, we go to Acts 1:8, that Acts 1:8 challenge, where we see that we will receive power upon the Holy Spirit upon you, and you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And that's what we want to. That's what part of what we hoped you got for Missionary Hour this year, is to see how you can get involved in Jerusalem, your home area. For our church, at Harvest Baptist Church, the church that I pastor, you're looking at our primary Jerusalem right here. We serve in our community where our church is, And Camp Nathaniel is our Jerusalem. And as Jeff has shared, part of what gets this grass cut is we've got a fellow in our church that comes over and sits on a mower for about 6 or 8 hours a week as a volunteer. And that's part of his mission. And he does it all summer long. We've got probably on any given week, we probably have 8 to 10 of our folks over here doing something every single week. Helping out. And that's not to brag on them or to brag on the church. That's to say, that's how Jerusalem works. We work and we're able to put more time and a greater investment and build even a closer relationship with Jerusalem. But it doesn't stop there. We have to have Jerusalem and Judea. We expand that out into our maybe our state missions as we kind of look at that, into Samaria, maybe North American missions and that or that, and then we go to the ends of the earth. And that's what we're going to talk about more today is really that ends of the earth ministry for us, but it kind of plays in and works through in about it could work in your Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, or to the ends of the earth kind of methods and means. And that's what we want to talk about. Again, we're going to talk about Mexico, but really I want to see it. What I want you to see is not so much where we're doing it, but how and why that we're doing it, so that you can take it back to your church or see how you can get involved with church. Maybe your church already has those partnerships, and if not, here maybe we can give you some hints how to get that going for you. But every church should emphasize missions. Every believer should emphasize missions. As we come together corporately, there should be a missions emphasis coming out of our church. Every Sunday morning at our church, we do what we call the Great Commission Focus. And every Sunday morning, we have a short video prayer. We talk about a nation. We learn something about that nation, and we pray for that nation corporately, because the Great Commission needs to be always on the forefront of our minds. And so that's part of the reason that we decided to do Missionary Hour this year like we have. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Harvest. Well, let me just say this, that if you want to consider yourself mission ready, truly mission ready, like, Lord, you use me. Now I don't know how many, and I don't want to see a show of hands, but you have to ask yourself, do I have the mindset, do I have the heart that I would be able to look with sincerity and faithfulness and allegiance to the Lord to say, Lord, you use me any way that you want to use me. Lord, you use me as your servant. You are my Lord. You are my King. You tell me what to do, and I will do it. You can't do that. I am convinced that you cannot do that unless you have a passport in your pocket. Because if you say that to the Lord, you've got to be ready to go, and you are not ready to go if you don't have a passport in your pocket. So let me challenge you. I don't know how many people in our church right now, and we're just a small little church, we'll talk about that, but we have multiple people. I think we have 6, 7, 8, 9 that I know about with passport applications in right now. Because we challenge our folks, you need a passport in your pocket. Maybe you use it, maybe you don't, but God can't send you internationally if you don't have that passport. And I would say, and then the other thing is, really the only thing else that you need is your testimony of your salvation. And the rest of that is taught and it's caught as you're going on missions. I know that I've heard it said many times. I agree. I think Jamie even alluded to it yesterday. That we need to be doing evangelism here, and if we're not good evangelists here, we're not going to be good evangelists over there. And that's true. I don't disagree with that at all. But I would tell you, when you are going on mission as part of a mission team and in your partnerships, and you're just able to share your testimony, that's part of the fuel that you're going to get that really compels you then to be a good evangelist. And it's going to make you come home and be a better evangelist, and when you start doing that, you're going to go and be a better evangelist, and they just feed off one another back and forth. It's really an addiction once to that point, in a good way, a good addiction. And so we look at, so we know we've received the call. Now what we're looking for is opportunity. Where does that opportunity come from? Well, let me tell you just a little bit about Harvest Baptist Church. Not because you need to know about our church, but I want to show you through our church that wherever you go to church, whatever size it is, wherever its location, you can be involved in mission. We planted the church back in 2010, about 20-25 minutes away from here. It's a small, very small, rural church. All churches are rural to some of you in Eastern Kentucky. I get that, but we're even rural to the other churches that maybe are found in the big cities like Hyman and Hazard. Rural world. That's right. We are all, in our church, we are all middle class. We don't have a big bank account. One of the things that we prayed about as we planted the church is, Lord, we want what you want, but our intention is not to draw in a bunch of transfer growth. We want to see people come to faith, and you just build your church from the ground up, because then we'll know it was you. It wasn't us being some kind of draw card to bring people that's just unhappy wherever they are. And the church and God has blessed the church in that way. So most of our folks are pretty new Christians. Many of them, probably the majority of them, are young Christians, younger than the church is, and have come to faith through the church. But even through that, we have taken teams. We've led teams to New Orleans. We had a good friend go down there, become a church planter, and we went down and served alongside him and his family in New Orleans, and did a vacation Bible school out in one of the rough communities. And then some of the guys, it was too dangerous for the girls, so some of the guys went over to the rescue mission and done some work there. As we were there, not only that, we've taken teams to St. Louis right after. If you remember all the incidences in Ferguson, we were just right there in that community. Our association had a partnership with the church there in St. Louis just after that. We went and we were able to serve there. We've had some of our folks go to Brazil. I just come back from there 3 weeks ago or so, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Let me interject there. Our kids always went with us. The trips that he's mentioning, Rachel and Riley, our kids, they went with us on all of those missions. And talking about passports, there's 7 now in our family. We have 5 kids. All of us have passports. So don't knock your children out of those opportunities as well.
I'm not sure they'll let Peyton in another country or out of this one.
I wanted to interject that too, because there's always opportunities for your kids to serve wherever you're serving, and that's a good witness for them too.
No, that comes off your time, but that's good. But we have sent people, I've gone and we've sent others to Brazil. That was a partnership through our association and even state convention. And we generally have at least a dozen or so or more that keep credentialed through disaster relief and respond at various times. As I said, we constantly have people serving here at Camp Nathaniel. In this very moment, as we stand here right now, we have 2 that are serving in the Middle East for this summer. One just returned from Spain and is serving at a camp up in Michigan, where we all know they need the Lord. And one serving, and we have one serving on summer staff here this summer at Camp Nathaniel. And I share all that because I want you to see that it doesn't have to be a big church. You don't have to go to a big church that has a missions pastor, that has a missions budget, and all those things. You don't have to have a lot of money to serve faithfully in the Great Commission work. There are no prerequisites. God, as the old saying goes, God doesn't send those who are equipped. He equips those whom He sends. And He will make way for you. And so we've got to be mission ready. You received the call. We're looking for opportunity now. And what I want to talk to you about today, or what we want to talk to you about today, is partnership. I am not a big fan of the term mission trip. And the reason being, it should be more than that. It's just more than that. I think it needs, and so we look at partnership. I won't say we won't go somewhere once. We went to New Orleans once because we went to serve a specific need with a brother that we had a relationship with, and we wanted to support them in that. But I'm going to tell you, the lasting kingdom work, I am convinced, is coming through partnerships, where you build a relationship and you set that out. And so we're going to help you understand. And what we're going to talk to you today about is, we're going to talk to you about our partnership in Mexico.
My time. Okay, he's the serious one, and if you don't know, I bring the comic relief. Does anybody, he says I'm not funny, but I think I'm hilarious. Does anybody here speak Spanish before I attempt this? Oh, no. Okay.
I'm sorry for what's about
I was looking out and I was like, is Rick Franklin here? Because I know he does. I was hoping he would. Okay, so in order to prepare yourself for missions, I work full-time. I'm a teacher. I'm also a nurse practitioner. I'm the medical director here. I have 5 kids. Now that should be an excuse. I don't have time to learn Spanish. And I'm old, okay? I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. I can't remember what we had for supper last night. So that should be tons of excuses for I can't learn a new language, right? And it is hard, I'm not gonna lie. But if you are truly goal-oriented to be prepared for missions, you do the hard work. So Josh and I have been attempting to learn Spanish. We have a lady that lives in Puebla, and we Skype her, and we have a language class. Sometimes it's 3 times a week, sometimes it's 4 times a week, sometimes it's once a week, according to our crazy schedules. But we do attempt it, and we try to do our homework, and we try to do what we can. So here's how far I've gotten, you Spanish speakers. Okay. Me llamo Marti. Este es mi esposo, Josh. Tengo 5 hijos, tengo 4 hijas y un hijo. Mi hijo es activo, divertido y animado. Cada hija es diferente, pero todos son muy dulces y cariñosos. Nosas. You got that? The vowels are hard. Nos encanta reír y divertirnos juntos. Mi esposo, I usually want to say esposa, and I call him a girl. Mi esposa es un líder maravilloso y nos une a todos. So, for the ones who don't know what I said, or for the ones who are trying to understand what I said. My name is Marty. This is my husband Josh. I have 5 kids. I have 4 daughters, 1 son. My son is active, fun, and lively. Does that describe Peyton?
Yes.
Okay, each daughter is different, but all are very sweet and caring. We love to laugh and have fun. My husband is a great leader and holds us all together. So, why I want to learn Spanish is when we're on the field, we have translators there, and they're wonderful. But I want to be able to speak my heart. I want to be able to speak Jesus to these people, and I want to know, are they translating what I truly want to say? And so I'm working extremely hard to be able to get those vowels down. You have no idea. E. And I is not E. It's so weird. So it's really hard for me as I'm trying to learn it. So pray for us in that. We're going to be there next week. And I'm going to attempt Spanish in real life next week. So be praying for that. Gracias. Questions?
So here's the reason Marty done the Spanish speaking part, is that as she said, we have a language teacher that's in Puebla, and she always trying to get, she's big on pronunciation. She said, I want you to sound like a Mexican, I don't want you to sound like an American trying to speak Spanish, so as you're in Mexico. And she says, so to get that pronunciation, she'll pick a word in English to get the sound, so I would get the sound. She said, how do you say this in English? Well, if you've not picked up on it already, I have a pretty heavy Eastern Kentucky drawl and accent, and she'll say, how do you say this word in English? And I'll say that word, she smiles, she said, that is not how you say that in English. You can't even speak English. Learning English.
Okay, partnerships.
With our partnership, when we're talking about partnerships, maybe that's you and somebody boots on the ground there. You're partnering with a mission a missionary, a church, a pastor, a friend that's moved to another place, whatever that might look like. Through the Southern Baptist Church, we have North American Mission Board and the International Mission Board, so we've got missionaries everywhere that we could partner with. That's not how this came about. Or you can, when you feel like, okay, there's a need, we recognize that need, but maybe there's a need, maybe it's not something we can meet by ourselves. Well, we don't meet this need by ourselves. How this all came about was back about 7 or 8 years ago, the Missouri Baptist Association done what they call a vision trip down into these villages that are in southern part of Puebla, which is just in what I call the southern part of Mexico, but they don't call it that. It's more central if you're from Mexico, but it is in that southern. It's about 4 hours south of Mexico City. And it's out into the rural villages, and they went, and what they found is there is just scores of villages down there where there is no Christian work. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are unreached, and there's nobody trying to reach them. They're out there. There's the Catholic, which is not Catholic. It's very syncretistic. It's very blended. It's very messed up, even in and of itself. And that's it. There is nothing else. Just about a week ago, I was asked why, and you get asked this all the time. I know if you're a missionary, you certainly, or a pastor, or whatever, what are you going there to minister for? There's lost people here in the United States. We've heard that 100,000 times. I've heard that, and I said, well, let me just say, and this person that asked me was about 10 minutes from our house, and lived about 10 minutes from our house, and I said, well, if I leave my house to come to your house, I'm going to pass about 10 churches. I said, when I leave one village moving to the other, I said, I pass 0 churches. There's no gospel down there. And so Missouri Baptist Association went through and found it. A friend of mine was a pastor in Alabama at the time, and his dad was part of that group, so he tagged along. Well, they ended up not going as a state organization, but Crossway Baptist Church did end up taking a partnership, partnering with a pastor that's down there. As did the pastor friend of mine that was from Alabama, found another pastor that he partnered with and comes back, or he felt like God was leading to. 2 separate villages, 2 separate pastors, but they knew one another, and it was in a decent proximity from one another. And so that birthed it. They were from Iron City Baptist Church in Anniston. We still partner. That was a church that partnered with us as a new church plant, and now we are partners together in Puebla and other places. And so we serve down there together, of course, our church, and then Iglesia Bautista Maranatha in Tula is the church that's on the ground. Little Village Church. Pastor Ruben, you'll hear me talk about here for the next. Jeff said I had till 11:15, Daniel, by the way. He did too. I've got it on video right there. And so he said, we have a pastor that has a wonderful little church in one of the villages, very central to the great need that's around it in all of the villages. He has a heart to reach these other villages, and so that's who we have partnered with in multiple ways, and we'll talk about what that looks like as we go along. But he is instrumental in it for sure. So why did we choose Puebla, Mexico? Well, because we found out there was a great need there. There's a huge need down in these villages, and there's just not anybody, as the old saying goes, the only thing worse than being lost is being lost and nobody's looking for you. And that's kind of what we feel like is happening there. And so we thought, you know what, that's a place that we can do. But not only that, we chose Puebla because we found out there was a need. We believe God orchestrated that. And as we looked deeper and deeper into it, we thought that is a place that with our church, we can do this. It's going to stretch our church. It's going to be hard. We have average maybe 40 to 45 people on a Sunday. On a good Sunday, we might hit 70. And on a real good Sunday, once or twice a year, you may get up to 80. I mean, and that's it. I mean, that's who our church is. We're small. We have a pretty confined community, and that's who we're trying to reach locally. And so I knew it would stretch us, but I was confident. I knew that if we would just be faithful and obedient, and we would be willing to sacrifice, that was a place that we could go and a work that we could do for the good of the kingdom. We have 4 primary core values at our church. We say, live as a disciple. That's a pretty deep thing. Get into the Bible and see what it is to truly live as a disciple. We live as a disciple, we make disciples, we encourage the church, and we do kingdom work. And I knew they could do this. I knew we could do it. If we would just be faithful, and God would use us in that. It was a trip that doesn't cost as much. It's not a $3,000 or $4,000 trip like a lot of international trips are. Usually for about $1,000 or $1,200 a person, we can go down and spend the week and cover all the expense of any trainings or whatever we're going to do. So it's something that I knew we could do. I was confident in that. And so I want to talk about the important components of what the partnership is, and this is true for us. If you're going to partner, get into true mission partnership, one of the things you have to have is a shared goal. If not, it becomes a mission trip. If you're not going with some kind of goal in mind, if we're not going with, here's what we're trying to accomplish, then it's going to end up being a trip. And you may build great relationships and have a great time and do some fine gospel work and encouragement, but it's not truly that mission partnership that we need to do to be able to reach the nations. And so our goal there was to lead people to Christ, come alongside the local church and evangelize and see people come to faith and see healthy churches planted. And so that's been our goal since day one. There needs to be shared accountability. We didn't immediately assume Pastor Reuben and his church was what they appeared to be. We took time to get to know them and build a relationship, and that's where a lot of our relationship efforts were placed, was in Pastor Reuben and his family, so we could get to know, do we know the man that he says and the people say that he is? And what we found is he was. Accountability within the partnership. I know that I can call on Iron City and Crossway. They were a part of what we just showed you, but they're kind of working individually. I'm hoping we're about to come together and for our next step in this partnership that I'll talk about as we close here in just a second. But then we need a shared plan or strategy, and this is what we're going to spend the rest of our time on, because I think a lot of times these last two, being that shared accountability and the strategy, I think they're really closely tied together, because both are accomplished through building that relationship on both sides of the border. And so we need to have that strategy and that accountability in place, but we're always looking and trying to reach the goal. So our first trip to Mexico was in 2017. And the way that we began and the strategy that we put in place was that we would go and we would encourage and we would challenge, I guess, the church there in Tula. They're about 25 minutes away from the village that we started working in. I know that doesn't sound like very much for you, but I'll tell you this, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself here. Pastor Reuben is about my age, roughly, maybe a year or two older than I am, about my age, and we helped buy him his first car. So 25 minutes is not an easy trek when you live in the villages. Most people down there, if you have a car, there's a lot of cars you'll see, old trucks or old little cars, older cars. You'll see a lot of them down there, but what you'll find out, and we've been told this, the ones that have a car, they've made a sacrifice to have that car. And so you're not going to, so what he was doing for a long time is they have these old ratty vans. If you watch the movies, and they're holding the goat, they're holding the chicken as they're on these vans, these pork, that's exactly what it is. They're little 10, 15 passenger vans, and you may get on there and the person beside you is holding some chickens under their arm or a goat under their arm or whatever it is that they're going to take down to the village square and try to trade or sell or do whatever they need to do for that. And so that's how it began. In those early trips, we'd done a lot of home visits. Pastor Reuben would go down and he would spend some time meeting some people in the village, and he would say, hey, we've got some folks coming. They would really like to come and share with you. Would that be okay? And so when we would get there, about 2 or 3 times a day, we would go and we would knock on their doors. Very, very poor people, but they were so kind And what we found was the culture there is so much like the culture in Eastern Kentucky, so hospitable. We would knock on their door. You would go to some doors that says, we're Catholic, don't bother us. And that's okay. We didn't bother them. We didn't knock on their door. We didn't bother them. But most would invite you in. We would be able to go in there. We would share a Bible study. I watched as Marty and Rachel and Riley they would sing in English. And one of the most touching things was to hear them sing "It Is Well With My Soul," and they would sing it in English. So I knew that the people couldn't hear it, but I also knew, man, God is hearing this. God is, and they were singing it with all their heart. And it was just moving, so we would sing a song with them sometimes, and then we would share about a 10-15 minute devotional. Sometimes I might go 20, I don't know. But as people come to faith, we proposed that the believers start meeting together. So we did this for a few years. At least twice a year we would go down, and once we seen people come into faith, we decided, you know what, you need to start coming together, because what would happen is Pastor Reuben would go to house to house to house after people would come to faith, and he would meet with them, try to meet with them weekly or at least every other week, and keep encouraging them in the Word. And they were starting to run him to death because we were seeing this, and he was still without a car at this point. So we would ride the old van to the village, and then he would walk. And these villages sometimes are 200 or 300 people, sometimes they're 2,000 or 3,000 people. And so you'd be walking around, he would be walking through. And you can, go ahead.
Isabel, she's my favorite one to visit. This is inside her home. She has a tree, and this is how she gets shade inside of her house. And then our translators, boy, what are they trying to say? How do I translate that? That happens all the time.
I'm sure it goes along. You'll see in this next, I think on this slide here, yeah, you'll watch. Pastor Reuben sent me some pictures early on, and you can see they're digging. They needed to do some baptism. They didn't have anywhere to do it out in Tula. They didn't have anything set up, or out in Awatimpin in the village that we were working in. And so about 3 or 4 of the guys dug this big hole. They took the time to dig the steps in. They found, I have no clue where they found the liner, but they did somewhere. Found this thing to be able to put in so that it would hold water, and they held a baptism one Sunday. They dug it that week, filled it full of water, and then it was done. It had done its purpose.
That's Pastor Reuben in the car.
Yeah. And there's the car we were able to provide for them with the help of Iron City Baptist Church as well. Right now, and so you can see how that has grown. And they started meeting together, which is still what they do. They do meet on a Sunday evening now for a service together, and Pastor Reuben preaches that message to them every Sunday now. And one of the things that he worked. The way he tried to make a little money is there's onyx everywhere, and they've been beautiful. We paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for tables and things. They're everywhere. I mean, his pulpit's made out of solid onyx. It's beautiful work, and he done that to try to make a living without a car. Would find ways to get those slabs brought in. He would do this work. And but later on, about a year and a half ago, we decided, you know what, we need this brother in full time, and so now we support him as a pastor. And he gets to be a full-time pastor. Little old church from Eastern Kentucky helping provide half the means for him to be able to be a full-time pastor. It just takes a little bit of sacrifice. And in that time, as it's grown, he's asked us now to start work in a new village. So now we work in a separate village as well. We're continuing through Awatimpin. Even though there's not a church there yet, as far as a building, he was excited to let us know. Well, I'll share that to the end here. But Oh yeah, and then so once we seen the church start coming together and meeting, what we wanted to do then was to help Pastor Reuben, to be an aid to him and to the believers there, and to teach them how important the Word was. And so we went down, and we done this in both the villages. We taught through the spiritual disciplines. And so we took about 40 copies, thinking that's going to be way more than enough, we was going to do one of the trainings in Awatimpin, one of them in St. Eramo, the other village, which is much further out, much more rural, And we went down, took about 40 copies with it, and the word started spreading that this was going to happen for free, and it was going to be a 2-day training, we had to end up sending about 20 more copies back down on the next trip, because they were just, we had folks coming in like 4 hours to meet up in that village to be able to have that training, when different pastors, through their networks, even throughout these rural villages, found out. And we just taught them through the importance of Bible intake, prayer, all the way down.
So this is us teaching the spiritual disciplines. Even Rachel, she taught a portion of it. And then the pictures on the right is them planning out where they hope to have a church one day in San Ramon.
And we've seen the work grow because we had a goal, we had a strategy, and we just let God lead it. But it's just faithfulness, willingness, making ourselves open. It would have been so easy to say, you know what, we're just a little church in Eastern Kentucky. That's too much for us. We're going to jump in and go with this bigger church on this mission trip, and that's going to be our thing. Or, you know what, we do a lot of work at Camp Nathaniel, and we're just going to let that be enough. But the Bible's plain that we're to take the gospel to the nations, that we are to make disciples of all nations in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And so where we're at now is we need pastors. We need pastors we need God to raise up men to pastor churches out in these villages, because when we're done in Iowa Tempest and we see that church up and running, we're done there. We're going to go back and we're going to love on them and be their friend, but we're going to move to the next village, as long as the Lord so leads. And so what started with home visits is now, Pastor Ruben just sent me that this week, they were able to have a women's conference, and as part of everybody getting together, and it was wonderful. I bet they had, looking at the picture, probably 30 women. Probably 30 women at that thing, but their church at least that's how it come through in translation, was Grace on Grace, is what the name of the church is going to be. And so where we're at with that ministry now is, because of that need for pastors, we will, and this is what led to us leaving the mission here, is next year we will begin training sites for pastors going through Reaching and Teaching International Ministries. There will be a 3-week program, 1 week, 3 times per year for 3 years, and men will be taught an Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, hermeneutics, homiletics, all those things to become solid Bible teaching, expositional preaching pastors, and know how to care for the people. With that, we'll be doing a women's track with that to help pastors' wives and to encourage the ladies out there in that village. And so if your church is looking for a partnership, we're going to be looking for people to go with us. I've got to be able to put training teams together that will go out into the villages for that week and help train these men. We will train you, and you will train these men and these women out in the villages. That's mission partnership. Build that relationship, having that goal in mind, and seeing healthy churches planted. And they're doing the work out there. Man, they're doing what we once were doing almost exclusively for them. Now they're doing it. It's just a wonderful thing to see. Praise God.